I tried to make this video like 3 times and I failed each one. So yes, there's 2 big global wars happening in politics and war right now. They're not very easy to explain. They're very big. So who's involved? You have the game, Fortuna, the evil axes, and Midgard. There are effectively 2 distinct global wars. The game versus Fortuna. And here we go. Midgard, or the evil axes versus Midgard. Yeah, should be able to tell from the color coding of the coalitions who's where, hopefully. We will start with the evil axes and Midgard, because that is the first war and also hopefully the simpler one. So we'll start where everyone else started, with the leaks. So a few days ago, because this is really, really new, Aurora was removed from Midgard. No one had any warning this was coming. It was just, wow, surprise, wake up, Aurora's been kicked out. And what quickly followed with these leaks. This is, I believe, James Wilson or Tyrion bringing all the other members of Midgard Bloc together, all the other leaders, and saying Aurora has planned wars against Odo and Florida, which are 2 other blocks. And their plots are so inept and so public that they're going to get us all rolled. And we have to kick them out before they get us all rolled. The rest of Midgard agreed. They didn't give Aurora any notice that this was happening. They didn't give them a chance to defend themselves, and they kicked them out. In response, then, here we go, the rest of the leaks. Aurora sort of blamed them for it and said, hey, we were only, we thought Florida and Odo were going to come and attack us, and so we were taking the necessary steps to build a defensive coalition against these groups, a backup plan, if you will. There's some doubt on this, specifically because defensive coalitions can very easily become offensive coalitions. So maybe they're telling the truth, maybe not. Even if they are, Midgard's argument has some credibility. And at the end of this huge argument, then Aurora gives Midgard its 72-hour notice, saying basically, we won't fight you and we will probably defend you for the next 72 hours out of goodwill. There is no actual contract, no treaty which binds this block together. So there's actually no obligation for Aurora to honor this 72-hour notice. Most of Midgard didn't really realize this because treaties, people don't really think of them that much anymore. They just sort of use blocks or spheres as sort of normative, unwritten rule sort of organizations. You're on my team. I don't really care like what the specific agreement is. You're on my team. So they don't really care. And they didn't pay that much attention. When these leaks happened, then Aurora came out and said, damn, I know who leaked that. We didn't leak that, Midgard did, and they did it to make us look bad. So Aurora organized a coalition that involved Carthago and Camelot to go and roll Midgard. Most of Midgard, not Legion of Dawn, for reasons I'll explain later. And this is a very interesting coalition. I will go to the Alliance Affairs posts and pull up the declarations of war by Davith and by the leader of Aurora. So Davith, his declaration of war is really simple. So he said Carthago was going to war because Midgard rolled us a few months ago and we want revenge. So they're very simple. Aurora lists their reasoning. They do this every war. It's fantastic for all of my videos because it's very concise. There's no confusion. So They blame Midgard for creating this group chat and not informing them, not giving them that opportunity to defend themselves. They blame them for trashing them publicly and for leaking this stuff. They blame them and they say they lacked respect and all of that. And they say that Aurora is an alliance that promotes interesting and fun wars, and Midgard is boring and stagnating and everything else that's bad. And so that's why they're pursuing this war. Camelot has not issued a declaration of war. Carthago is claiming that Camelot isn't really part of their coalition. They're just sort of joining for the hell of it. Which, who knows? Like, Camelot is a notoriously... you don't really know what Camelot's doing until like 3 to 4 months after the fact, and then you sort of have an idea. Yeah, so that's really fun. On the Midgard side of things, then they went on a radio show, Thalmor Radio, which I'm not in at the moment. They went on a radio show, and they said that they sort of expected this war to happen at some point. They didn't expect it to happen immediately. They think that Aurora is violating the 72-hour agreement, even though there is no formal treaty, and so forth. The war itself is progressing. Do I have CT owned up? Here we go. It's taking 5 years. Ragnarok, which I guess is the name Carthago is trying to impose on people. This whole site is run by Carthago. There's also some other interesting like propaganda tidbits here. Camelot doesn't appear in this list, even though it's part of the Aurora coalition, because Carthago doesn't believe they should count. They think they're a separate thing. Yeah, so it's not going well for Midgard, for the Immortals, Serenway, UPN, and so forth. This looks like it's tilted heavily in the Evil X's favor, like they outnumber Midgard. They don't. Midgard definitely outnumbers the Evil X's, like, significantly. The reason that Aurora and the Evil X's have managed to take Midgard by storm is because they militarized because of smaller wars. Camelot was at war with MPO for ages. Aurora was at war with Coven. Carthago militarized because of some small dispute. They all militarized for random ass reasons, and then they attacked Midgard, which didn't militarize at all. They were pretty low. So they had a militarization advantage. They had the offensive advantage. Midgard sort of had some notice that it was going to happen, but not a lot. So more of the Evil X's were online at the time. Moving on. There are some points of interest to the conflict. Wrong one. There we go. The Camelot one I've already covered. Camelot doesn't really have a reason for entering, or it's very unclear what their reason is. The Fighting Pacifists is really interesting because Carthago is an ally of the Fighting Pacifists, and they're working with Aurora to attack Midgard, right? But Aurora is also attacking the Coven, which has an MDP with the Fighting Pacifists. So TFP is caught between both sides, loosely, right? Loosely both sides. It's not allied to Midgard, but it's allied to Coven. And Coven isn't allied to Midgard, but it's still fighting Aurora and the rest of the Evil X's, presumably. Legion of Dawn is, again, the spiciest piece of that whole conflict so far. So, Legion of Dawn was left out of the Blitz, right? The Evil X's attacked everyone in Midgard except the Protectorates and Legion of Dawn. Now, Legion of Dawn should have been the prime target. They are the people with the most militarization. They had some sort of foreknowledge that the war was coming because of various factors. And they should have been the prime target here. To win the war, like, Legion of Dawn was absolutely necessary for Midgard. And so they should have been the number one target for the evil X's. But they were not attacked. They were deliberately left out. And that was a very wise decision because Legion of Dawn has, until now, still refused to enter the war. There is some explanation as to why that is, though. So the leader of Legion of Dawn wants to enter the war. He said, we must honor our treaties, we must be loyal and honor our obligations. And his high government said, nah, Aurora was an ally like 24 hours ago. This seems like some sort of internal dispute. We don't want to get involved. It's not our business, right? These are allies making mistakes. So they're staying out. And the high government has the bank. So they have all the material that Legion of Dawn needs to fight the war. And the constitution of Legion of Dawn is also complicated enough that the high government is either able to veto the leader or able to slow things down enough that the leader cannot force them into the war. So very interesting, very fun. They're having some sort of constitutional crisis while their sphere burns. There might be some more leaks on that front. Oh, these will be the Khan leaks. Yeah, so Khan is the head of foreign affairs for Legion of Dawn. And he is also the former leader of Aurora. He led them for several years, and when he left and joined Legion of Dawn, people sort of said he's probably working for Aurora. He's trying to puppet them and merge them into Aurora. So him keeping Legion of Dawn out is in some people's mind confirmation that he was an Auroran agent the whole time. And he's helping his old alliance. Who knows if that's true or not, but if it is, that's really fun. And it's fun for another reason. Legion of Dawn voted with the rest of Midgard to kick out Aurora, which would mean, if it were true, that Khan agreed to kick his former alliance out of the Bloc. But the moment Aurora turned around and declared war on Midgard, he defected back to Aurora and is now working with them against Midgard. Either way, absolutely fascinating, lots of fun. How do I think this war will end? I think there are two options. Option one is that outside parties will come in and roll Aurora and save Midgard. That is incredibly boring, not much fun. Option two is that Aurora and their coalition roll Midgard, impose whatever peace terms they're going to impose, and then we'll have some revenge wars come out of it, or we'll have some like political spiciness. Maybe Legion of Dawn gets kicked out of the Bloc next. Maybe both alliances or both blocks have to reorganize dramatically. You know, who knows? Anything could come of this. It's a very unusual war. Aurora will need a sphere after this, certainly. Maybe they'll build their own. Hard to know. So that's one of the wars. The other war is the game versus Fortuna. I'm just going to open this up now. So the game versus Fortuna is it's a little bit simpler, but also more complicated. So it was yesterday at day change when 75% of the game pretty much attacked Fortuna. They provided a series of declarations of war on the forums by TFP, by Requiem, by Knights Templar, Paradise, House Stark, etc. That's AI. Requiem didn't really provide much explanation. KT didn't provide a ton of explanation except revenge against Eclipse. Paradise seems to be declaring war on Aurora, but doesn't. Fascinating. House Stark declaring war on all of them, not really stating any reasons. It's really weird. So on the radio shows yesterday, because there's always a radio show after these big global wars start, usually the radios last about an hour, and both coalitions can come on and talk about what they expect from the war, why it happened, and so forth. The game had a few representatives from Knights Templar, TFP, and Paradise. They admitted the war is a dog pile, so Fortuna's going to lose. It's going to lose big. It's terribly outnumbered. And the reason that they dogpiled them and they didn't care about a fair fight is because this war is a statement that the status quo is unacceptable. Neat. More detail would be fantastic, because it's not terribly clear what Eclipse and the Syndicate are doing that's perpetuating the status quo. My only takeaways from that radio were sort of guesses why this fight happened. And I have basically 3 of them. So firstly, Eclipse and the Syndicate have a lot of the largest nations in the game. So it could be they're opposing upper tier consolidation. Maybe. That might be it. There's a lot of other alliances consolidating the upper tier, right? I mean, Grumpy and Rose are still aligned. Sorry, not Grumpy. A Guardian and Rose are aligned. Grumpy probably has some secret arrangement with another alliance, if I'm being totally frank. Hog existed a few months ago. Hollywood existed before that. Upper tier consolidation is an issue we're always going to face. So it doesn't seem like that's the biggest reason to take them down. It could be because Eclipse has not lost a war in a year and a half. That's compelling reason. Paradise and Cataclysm, 100% they'd want to take Eclipse down for that reason. Everyone else, not so much, but maybe that's it. I guess it's better than some other explanations. And the option 3 is that they are definitely the strongest economy in the game, but like a wide margin. Eclipse and the Syndicate produce way more money than I'd say almost any other coalition except maybe Rose. Maybe. It's a big if. So that would probably be my guess. I think it's economic. I think they'll use other explanations, but it's probably economic. And there had to be some sort of war, right? Either it was Rose versus Odo, or it was Florida or Rose versus Eclipse, or it was TKR versus Eclipse, right? There had to be some sort of combination. And Eclipse and the Syndicate were just too powerful to work with any other sphere against a third one. So they all looked at the board and they said, well, the only alliance that really wins here is Eclipse and the Syndicate. They're going to make a ton of money. It's much easier if we work together to take them down. That's probably it. That's the strongest option. But let's go to points of interest. So Paradise attacked first. I think they attacked 10 or 20 minutes before the rest of the coalition. Not ideal, not great. Knights Templar. So they are an interesting case because they fought Eclipse and Rose back in December. So did Grumpy and Guardian, which are noticeably absent. Noticeably because they are 2 of the largest whale alliances in the game. And I personally thought taking down Eclipse without them was impossible. You needed them to take out Terminus S and Eclipse. Apparently not. Apparently if you just have sheer numbers, you can do it. But it definitely would have been easier with Guardian and Grumpy. In December, when Guardian and Grumpy lost that war, against Eclipse. They signed a non-aggression pact which lasts until May 24th. Knights Templar also lost that war, but it signed a non-aggression pact that lasted until March 20th. So Knights Templar was able to fight a bit early. So that's why they're in this war and Guardian and Grumpy are not. All of Guardian's allies are in this war, but it cannot participate. Maybe if the war lasts until the 24th, then Guardian will join. Who knows? What else is there? There's the weaponized assault penguins. So this is an interesting one. So when the war initially started, then the weaponized assault penguins, which is a protectorate, they were attacked as well. Now, normally you don't attack protectorates. You skip them. So it's quite important. It's quite unique in this war that protectorates were added as well. Afterlife was also attacked and they're another protectorate. But Afterlife is more justifiable, I think. Afterlife merged into Paradise, and then after like a few months, they were like, this sucks, and then they unmerged. And so Paradise is probably a bit bitter about that, and they want to get some revenge. So that's explainable. The weaponized assault penguins one, though, I would hazard a guess. I think either it was a mistake that they were attacked, or it's because of Black Knights. In a very similar way to Afterlife, WAP were government members in Black Knights, and they didn't like what was happening there. They thought the alliance was being like boring, and they split off and signed a protectorate with Eclipse. So it could be revenge. That's quite possible. There's the Fighting Pacifists. They're an odd cookie because it's not terribly clear why they would be involved in this war. Aurora attacked their ally, the Coven, a few weeks ago. The Fighting Pacifists didn't become involved. They could have. It would have been perhaps not an easy war, but one they might be able to win, and one they probably should have fought, but they didn't. They could have then participated in the war against Midgard. Carthago's involved, and Carthago is sort of necessary for their security. So it's very strange that they didn't join that. Instead, the Fighting Pacifists is attacking Eclipse and the Syndicate, and they don't really have any tensions with them. They have no reason to participate. In fact, the Fighting Pacifists, if they were plotting a war or joining a plot against Eclipse, they may have to tell Carthago about it, because they have a treaty with Carthago, which has a treaty with Eclipse. So anything that affects Eclipse's security affects Carthago's security to an extent. Well, the intelligence clauses in treaties mean that if TFP has information which concerns Carthago's security, they have to tell them. So if there was a war being planned, TFP would have to tell Carthago there's a war being planned. And once Carthago was told that, they would then have to share that information with Eclipse. For that reason, and for some other reasons, I think the Fighting Pacifists was added last or later in the planning process. And they were added to make this a true global that involved, like, everyone was at war at the same time, even if they're not involved in the same war. And it was to avoid leaving them out, because if the Fighting Pacifists, if TFP is left out, then they may be targeted after the war by either coalition or by people just trying to stop them gaining economic advantages by avoiding it. So yeah, I think that's why they've been added. They're a very weird inclusion in this war. There's a few other notes. House Stark. House Stark was allied to the Syndicate for 5 years. 5 long years. There is no way in hell that the Syndicate is not currently raging and ranting at how Stark, you betrayed us. How dare you? After everything we did for you, you'd be nothing without us. I don't think it will ever be public. Like, they'll always keep this in like the embassies or back channels, DMs, but I guarantee that it's happening. And it will be one of the most interesting results of this war. Like, that betrayal will last for a very long time. Whereas, I don't know, maybe the other consequences of this war would just be some alliances finding new allies or moving around. It's not going to be super substantial. Like, that sort of broken relationship between those alliances might be way more interesting. Requiem is another interesting case. So in Midgard versus the Evil X's, then Khan was the former leader of Aurora. He joined Legion of Dawn, and he was accused of working for Aurora. Partisan was the leader of the Syndicate. He left with a lot of the government and formed Requiem, which is now a dead center of the enemy coalition that has come to roll the Syndicate. He's allied to House Stark and the Fighting Pacifists indirectly. He's allied to KT, which ties into Cataclysm and TKR, and he's allied to Rose. He's dead center on the page of that coalition. There is a high chance he was responsible for the plot, that he brought them all together and helped them organize this thing. And damn, that's a story, right? Because that's him bringing the whole game together to roll his old alliance, to roll his successes. That is a wicked, and it's such a cool contrast with Midgard versus the Evil X's, right? It's absolute contrast, Partisan and Khan. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. I want to know how that story ends. But the politics in this game is so obscure. It's so hidden, right? If that's what's happening, like, all of the leaders will know and no one else will know. And I'm not paying enough attention to the back channels and to the plotting to know, sadly. Oh, and Eclipse. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier. Yeah, Eclipse's war plans got leaked, Aurora's got leaked as well. They also, on the radio show, admitted that they're gonna lose. Like, they know they're gonna lose. And they haven't decided yet if Eclipse and the Syndicate are gonna split. But that's basically what's gonna be discussed. And either they split and then sort of the enemy coalition has to adjust. Maybe Eclipse will ally with Aurora, or the Immortals or something, or the Fighting Pacifists or Cataclysm again. I don't know. Something weird will happen, and all the spheres will change. Or Eclipse and the Syndicate stay together like Hollywood did when this exact thing happened to them. And what are people going to do? They'd have to just repeat the same war again, maybe with less success next time. So, I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. Yeah, so I think it's pretty clear the Evil X's will probably beat Midgard. The game will beat Fortuna. There could be some sort of connection or overlap between the wars and like small incidents. I don't think that'll be too substantial. It's possible that once the game defeats Fortuna, they will then turn and roll the Evil X's and save Midgard. Maybe there's some justification for that, like that Aurora and the Evil X's are villains that need to be defeated. I don't know. I think it's too complicated, that war, to... There's too many shades of gray to just roll them like that. Aurora is definitely like fighting Rose in like public channels and stuff. Rose is condemning them and supporting Midgard. And that could all just be false flag stuff though. Like Rose, their militarization was really noticeable, right? It was a big red flag to Eclipse. So Rose could have been doing all the Aurora drama, right, to sort of suggest they were going to intervene there, to hide the fact they were plotting against Eclipse. And now that they've attacked Eclipse, all of that will fade away. Or they'll keep it up just for the sake of it, for fun. The Paradise Declaration of War mentions Aurora. Like, it's focused on Aurora. And again, it could be that's sarcasm and it was false flag stuff. Or it could be, and I know I've heard this from some Aurora people, that Rose is planning to roll Aurora later. And so that declaration is just sort of a sleeper. That just, it's foreshadowing. It's setting up. Or that that was the original plan. That they were actually going to attack Aurora. And at the last minute, they were like, oh, wait a minute. Everyone's sort of prepared here. We could attack Fortuna. So I don't know what happened there. I don't know how this will play out. Maybe things will just continue from where they stand now. Evil X's beat Midgard. The game beats Fortuna. Fortuna splits up. Midgard probably splits up. Evil X's have to find new allies. Everyone has to find new allies. Or they get combined, in which case the Evil X's and Fortuna might unite into one block, and the rest of the game will unite into another, bipolarity. Or they all get rolled. Fortuna and the Evil X's all get rolled together, and then afterwards they split into 2 or 3 distinct spheres of their own. It's hard to say. In terms of peace terms for this war, I have no clue what they'll be, obviously. You'll probably have non-aggression pacts. I would be shocked if that didn't occur. I don't think there'll be a ton of punitive terms. Terms are slowly coming back as a way of adding spice and interest to the game. But I don't think there'll be anything serious. There'll probably be joke terms. There'll probably be more in the game versus Fortuna than the Evil X's versus Midgard. I don't see what terms they could even try to impose in that conflict without severe reputational damage. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I might make a video about this later, in more detail, depending on how things play out, because it might be really interesting. It might be very fun, or it might not. It might be very boring. I did reach out to people in various coalitions to see if they wanted to talk. Most of them were pretty nervous because they didn't want to get their coalitions in trouble, which is respectable, and that's fine. If people do want to talk, they can reach out to me and we can figure something out. I might be able to do interviews with people later in the conflict if they're willing to shed insight that I do not have into some of the plots and the back channel stuff. Oh, and before I forget, there is a really cool site which was developed by Unlimited in Goon Squad, which is an Auroran extension or ally. It basically shows all the nations involved in the Midgard versus Evil X's war. And I'll sort of explain what this is. So, for example, this is Church of Adam. That's their alliance flag. The size of the circle is indicative of their nation size. So this is like a city 10. This is probably like a city 20. The green arrows, that's an offensive war. So he's attacking 2 people in UPN, that's their alliance flag. This is an Auroran member. They're being attacked by the Immortals. That Immortals member is being attacked by the dev of the site and by a member of Carthago. Cool. So this sort of gives you some indication as to how the war is playing out. The lines also indicate which alliance is fighting, right? UPN, purple, Aurora, blue-ish. Yeah, so there's a lot of blue on this page. That's Aurora. They're doing most of the fighting. The Immortals is also clustered in the middle. They have a lot of wars going on. Most of these are defensive. Camelot is fighting in the south. They're fighting a fair few wars. There I am. Wait a minute. I have more wars than 3. Well, whatever. There are a number of people. Oh, there's a lot of camel people on the periphery too. Basically fighting 1v1s against isolated parts. This is a bunch of protectorates or Carthago members, I think. Yeah. So a bunch of Carthago people fighting the outskirts. Some UPN people. And Aurora's Training Alliance. That's the Training Alliance of Church of Adam. Yeah. So a lot of it's really concentrated. There's a lot of people with like 3 or 4 ongoing wars. Either 2 or 3 offensive or 3 defensive and an offensive. A lot of chaos. But out of all of it, I think it's definitely going, and this is a pretty good visual indication, it's going in Aurora's favor. And they're definitely pulling their weight. Camelot's also not doing too badly. Carthago, very visible in the white wave here. Yeah, they're doing very well. UPN has some of the largest nations, but they seem to be going down or not putting up that much of a fight, unfortunately. I don't think I see Serene Way here at all. Oh, here they are. So no, they are in the center of things. They're just... they're not doing it, that I can see. I made a video pointing out, like, Serene Way using naval attacks. All of them using naval attacks, and it's so bad. It's so bad. Like, their guides are so good. I don't know how they're this bad at the game. It's literally the worst attack. Fortifying would be more useful to them than naval attacks.